Hello dear learners. Today's topic is evolution and growth of rural local governance in India, focusing on constitutional provisions, community development program. Learners, this lecture aims at familiarizing you with the institutions of Panchayati Raj as important mechanisms for the decentralization of power and people's involvement in development activities. We shall be discussing this topic under following headings: Introduction, meaning and need of local government, rural local governance, and evolutionary perspective from ancient period, medieval period, British period, post-independence period. Then community development program, Balwant Rai Mehta Committee, 73rd Constitutional Amendment Bill, provisions of the bill, critical evaluation and conclusion. Now, first of all, introduction. Rural local governance has emerged as a prominent issue in the literature of public administration and is one of the important social inventions of contemporary period. It has become an important policy objective during 1970s and 1980s, as government in developing countries sought to create more socially equitable patterns of economic growth and meet the basic needs of the poor. As a result of great increase in the number and complexity of functions of modern state, rural local governance has become a major element in the administrative organization of governmental services. Local government operates at the lowest level of society. It works at the grassroots level close to the people, touching their everyday life. No other government, whether state or national, is as near the people as this. Historically too, it is older than the other levels of government because governance began with the organization of people into small communities in a limited area. These institutions are created by the national and state enactments at the base of the governmental institutions, with national government at the apex and state government at the middle level. Whether it is the first level of governance or a 2-tier or 3-tier authority depends upon the political structure of a country. So, students, as we see that self-governing rural local bodies are assuming more and more importance in the field of public administration in the modern times. And historically too also, if we see, local self-governance is important because the process of governance itself started when people began to organize themselves into small communities and tribes in a particular area. In contemporary times also, as the nature and functions of the modern state is increasing day by day owing to the concept of welfare state, it is necessary to give powers and functions to the institutions of local self-government. The creation of these institutions of local self-governance in the era of 1970s and 80s was considered as a political and administrative innovation of far-reaching in the field of public administration. As we all know, the local self-government reaches to the people directly because it operates at the lowest level of the society or at lowest level of the governance, that is at the grassroots level, and it is not possible for the national and state governments to reach at that level where the lowest level, that is local governance, reaches. Now, meaning and need for local government. Local government is an integral part of the 3-tier system of government. It is at the bottom of a pyramid of governmental institutions. Local bodies are institutions of the local self-governance which look after the administration of a locality, a village, a town, a city or any other area smaller than the state by a body representing local inhabitants, possessing a fairly large amount of authority, raising at least a part of its revenue through local taxation and spending its income on the services which are regarded as local and therefore as distinct from state and central services. Local government is an important institution in the world and in India. They act as vehicles in carrying back to the people the power that really belongs to them. It is now widely accepted that self-governing institutions at the local level are essential for national growth and for effective people's participation, and that they are integral and indispensable part of the democratic process. Grassroots of democracy based on small units of government enables people to feel a sense of responsibility and to inculcate the values of democracy. At the same time, it also offers a unique opportunity to participate in public affairs, including development work. In a vast, diverse and complex subcontinent, decentralization is also a political and administrative imperative. So, students, we see that local governance is an integral part of the three-tier system of the government, that is national level, state level and at the local or local level, that is at the lowest level. Local governance in India is the prime instrument for decentralization at the grassroots level. They assume importance due to the need to contain the relentless demographic pressures and optimum use of scarce resources for the development. Local bodies, that is local institutions of governance, look after the needs of the and administration of a particular small area, a locality, a city, a small town or a village, and they raise the revenue and spend that income from taxation for the development of that particular small area, region, town, city or village. Now, local governance is assuming importance day by day. Civic services is needed by any community because of the planned, programmed and integrated development of that particular small area or region. In other words, we can say that the distribution of work is done on the territorial basis by the rural local governance. Next, rural local governance in India and evolutionary perspective. Ancient India. The earliest period in Indian history belongs to Indus Valley civilization, which was essentially an urban in character. The excavations carried out at various places reveal that they were amongst some of the oldest planned cities of the world. They were laid out with wide streets, marketplaces, public offices, community baths and drainage and sewerage system. This testified to the existence of a vigilant and effective municipal government. On the other hand, the Aryans were mostly rural people. That is why the village has been the pivot of administration in India since the earliest times. The Vedic hymns bear testimony to this, which frequently pray for the prosperity of villages, but rarely for that of towns and cities. The village government was usually carried on under the direction and supervision of a village headman known as Gramani. The village admin's post was usually hereditary. He was the most important officer of the village administration. King consulted him while deciding village grants. Collection of the government revenue and defense of village was his important duty. He was the head of village council. Another important officer was village accountant, who kept records of rights and transfer of village land papers connected with the government dues and recorded decision and resolutions of the village council. There was a primary assembly of village. All respectable householders were entitled to become its members. We find references of Gram Sanghs in the Manusmriti, Kautilya's Arthashastra and Mahabharata. The village headmen could not rule over village community at their pleasure. In carrying on administration of village, they were guided by the village public opinion, which was expressed through the village elders who formed a kind of informal council. During the Mauryan period, villages used to organize work of public utility and recreation, settled disputes between the members of the village and acted as trustees for the property of minors. During the Chola period in South India, the primary assembly of the village was known as Ur and Sabha. It must be added that village council in ancient India worked successfully because people had a high regard for truth and character and were respectful towards the age, experience and ability. Members of the village council were not elected, they were raised to the status by consensus of public opinion. Democracy of modern type involving voting and party politics did not exist. So, students, we see that local governance has been a major concern in India since time immemorial. Its history goes back to the ancient period. We see that though the Indus Valley people were regarded as the urban population, it was urban in character, but the Aryans were mostly the rural people. We find the references of rural local governance in the Vedic period. Vedic hymn talks of the prosperity of villages. Various Vedas mentions the village assemblies like Gram Sabhas, Samitis, which worked for the prosperity of the villages and looked after the administration of the villages. Our two great epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata, also talks of the rural local governance. In the Shanti Parv of Mahabharata, there is a reference of the Sabha called Sansad. It was considered as the it consisted of the common people, and therefore it was called as the Jan Sansad. In Valmiki's Ramayana, there is a reference of Janpad, which was a sort of the federation of village republic, and head of the village was referred to by various names in ancient literature like Gramani, Gramuktas, Gramika, Mahantkas in different parts of the country. And the main duty of these officers of the village was the collection of the revenue and the defense of the village. So, we see that in ancient India, the rural local governance was in existence. Now, coming over to the medieval period, democratic and self-governing institutions of local government suffered a decline during the Muslim rule in India. The Sultanate of Delhi was despotic with a highly centralized bureaucracy. Sher Shah Suri and thereafter the Mughals, especially Akbar, introduced several changes in the general and particularly in the revenue administration. Central government took over police duties, which restricted the law and order functions of the village panchayat. The taxation system introduced by the Mughals led to the rise of a class of revenue farmers or zamindars. The control of these zamindars over the village increased with the decline of the Mughal power in the 18th century. The setup of Mughal administration was such that no democratic administration in the area of local government was possible. The local people were not associated with the management of civic affairs. Thus, it can be concluded that in medieval and Mughal India, there was no local governance enjoying the powers of self-government as in ancient India. So, students, coming over to the medieval period, we see that the democratic institutions of self-government which were in existence in ancient India suffered a setback owing to the centralized and despotic rule of the Sultanate, Delhi Sultanate. And during the Mughal period also, it suffered a setback because Mughal administration was highly centralized administration and they did not give preference to the rural local governance. Instead, they developed a class of revenue farmers known as zamindars, and gradually with the decline of the Mughal period and with the decline of the Muslim rule in India, these class of zamindars controlled the revenue administration of the rural area. So, owing to the highly centralized administration, the rural local governance suffered a setback during the Muslim rule in India. Now, coming over to British period. Although the local government existed in India in ancient times, present structure and style of functioning owe its existence to British rule in India. The main concern of the British was the maximization of land revenue and maintenance of law and order. The British rulers for the first thought of reversing the trend of centralization in 1882 when Lord Ripon issued a resolution proposing steps in the direction of local self-government. Though Lord Ripon's reforms constitutes landmark in the history of local government in India, it did not receive much encouragement from the central as well as provincial governments. Accordingly, the present idea of democratic decentralization, that is rural local government in India, is the result of Lord Mayo's resolution 1870, Lord Ripon's resolution 1882 and the report of Royal Commission on Decentralization 1909. The Government of India Acts of 1919 and 1935 have further contributed in this direction. Though the British introduced their own brand of local government in urban areas, but in countryside, the establishment of panchayat did not make much headway. So, students, although the institutions of local governance were in existence in ancient India, but its present structure and style of functioning is credited to the British rule in India. The British government, with a view to preserve and stabilize its political control, took various measures and recognized the panchayats in the villages. Lord Ripon, who is also regarded as the father of the local self-governance in India, he introduced various measures for the development of rural local governance. Further, the various Government of India Acts like Government of India Act of 1919, 1935 have also contributed in the direction of the rural local governance. But students, as we all know, Britishers were mainly concerned with the maximization of revenue and maintenance of law and order. So, the panchayats formed under the various acts issued by the British government during that period were not very much democratic bodies, because government nominated their members and most of their members were nominated by the government, and the powers given to them were mere, and they were also not given financial resources as per their requirement. Post independence. After independence of India in 1947, the first major event was the adoption of our constitution and its promulgation on January 26, 1950. It declared India as sovereign democratic republic. Our constitution provides a clear mandate for democratic decentralization. One in the chapter on directive principles of state policy, Article 40 states that the state shall take steps to organize village panchayats and endow them with such powers and authority as may be necessary to enable them to function as units of self-governments. Next, there is entry 5 in the list 2, that is state list of 7th schedule in the constitution, which states local governments, that is to say the constitution and powers of municipal corporations, improvement trusts, district boards, mining settlement authorities and other local authorities for the purpose of local self-government or village administration. By the virtue of this entry, the subject of local government, both urban and rural, belongs to state to be dealt with by them. So, students, after independence of India in 1947, the major task was before the country was the framing of the constitution and its adoption, which was done in 1950. Constitution proclaimed India as a democratic sovereign republic. Now, our constitution mentions of the rural local self-governance in the form of directive principles contained in part 4. Under article 40 of the directive principles, it is mentioned that the state shall take steps to organize village panchayats and endow them with such powers and authority as may be necessary to enable them to function as units of self-governance. Next, about the local self-governance is mentioned in the state list, that is the list on which the state governments can make laws. It also talks about the rural and urban local self-governance, which is a state subject, and local and urban self-governance belongs to both topics belongs to the state, on which states can make legislations. After independence in India, drastic changes were introduced in system of local self-government. The government introduced the Janpad scheme in 1948, which is regarded as the precursor of the Panchayati Raj institutions in India. It shifted the focus of administration from district to its sub-unit, that is Tehsil, to be called Janpad, which was a group of villages. There was to be an assembly at this level called Janpad Sabha, which was to control both urban and rural local governments within its jurisdiction. Students, after the independence of the country, in the field of rural local self-governance, government introduced the Janpad scheme in 1948. This scheme is regarded as the precursor of the Panchayati Raj institutions which were to be established in the country later on. Under the scheme, the focus was shifted on from the district to the tehsil, which was to be called Janpad, and this Janpad was the group of the villages, and there was a assembly to take care, that is Janpad Sabha, and it was to control both rural and local administration within its jurisdiction. The community development program. Panchayati Raj system in India has evolved out of the community development program CDP introduced on October 2, 1952, intended to bring about the socio-economic development of rural masses in a democratic way. The program of community development was started to create among the rural masses of India an active interest in national schemes of economic planning and social reconstruction. To seek the cooperation of the village population, block advisory committees and block development committees were established. The National Extension Service (NES) further supplemented it in 1953, but within a few years it was realized that the program has not delivered the desired results due to lack of people's participation in development programs, and it was not able to initiate the process of transformation of socio-economic life of rural masses as was expected in the first 5-year plan document. Even Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who was very enthusiastic about the program in initial years of community development, observed that the program has lost its clan and had faded away. So, students, after the independence, when planning system was introduced in India in 1952, in the first 5-year plan, government introduced the program, community development program, that is CDP, which was started to create among the rural masses of India an active interest in the national schemes of economic planning and social reconstruction. This phenomenon of economic planning and development administration in India can be traced to the CDP, which was started in October 2, 1952 based on the recommendations of the Krishnamachari Committee report. It was a nationwide project launched by the government throughout the country, and the major concern behind the CDP was the introduction of people in the local development aimed at the utilization of the locally available resources for the development of particular area. In 1953, government launched another program known as National Extension Service. It was to supplement the community development program. Although both these schemes, that is CDP and NES, were executed in a very much planned manner, these programs suffered from underachievement because of the lack of interest of the rural population in these programs. Balwant Rai Mehta Committee. In January 1957, a study team on community development and National Extension Service headed by Shri Balwant Rai Mehta was appointed to review the working of the CDP. The team, which submitted its report in late 1957, suggested the establishment of Panchayati Raj or democratic decentralization. It felt that popular enthusiasm could be sustained only when development machinery works under the elected representative of the people. They therefore recommended devolution of the development and decentralization of machinery of administration with adequate delegation of powers to the Panchayati Raj institutions. It recommended the setting up of elected and organically linked democratic bodies at the village, block and the district levels, and entrusting of all planning and development activities to these bodies. The government accepted the recommendations of the committee in 1958, and the PR system was inaugurated on 2nd October 1959 in Nagaur district of Rajasthan by the then Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. The other states also adopted this system as per their requirements and conditions. So, students, when the community development programs and National Extension Service failed to deliver the results, government decided to review its functioning and working, and it appointed a committee known as Balwant Rai Mehta Committee to review the working of these two programs in 1957. Now, this Balwant Rai Mehta Committee submitted its report in late 1957, and it suggested for the establishment of Panchayati Raj or democratic decentralization. This committee suggested that it was the lack of the popular enthusiasm behind the non-working of the CDP and NES. It suggested for the construction of PR institutions on the basis of the elected representatives of the people directly. It recommended devolution of development programs to the people and suggested for the machinery of administration with adequate delegation of power to these PR institutions. The government accepted the recommendations of this committee, and the first PR system was inaugurated in the country in the state of Rajasthan in Nagaur district in 1959 by the then Prime Minister. 73rd Constitutional Amendment Bill. To revitalize the PRIs, various committees and commissions were established by the government from time to time. The net result of the recommendations of these committees was that a proper environment was created in favor of giving a new thrust to the concept of PRIs or democratic decentralization. All political parties by and large arrived at the conclusion that it was high time to give constitutional status to the PRIs now. The result of such consensus was the introduction of the 64th Constitutional Amendment Bill in the Parliament in 1989, but the bill could not materialize and it fell. When Congress party returned to power under Shri P.V. Narasimha Rao, it modified the earlier bill of 1989 relating to the Panchayati Raj institutions and introduced it again in the Parliament as Constitutional 73rd Amendment Bill in 1991. It was passed by the Parliament in December 1992 and ratified by states in 1993. Panchayati Raj institutions became a part of the constitutional scheme in 1993. By now, all the states and union territories except those exempted from the purview of the 73rd Amendment Act have enacted legislations to bring their Panchayati Raj legislation in conformity with the Constitution. So, students, to strengthen the PRI institutions, various measures were taken by the government from time to time in the form of appointing commissions and committees to review the working of the PRIs. And it was decided to give constitutional status to the PRIs now. As we all know that after the death of Indira Gandhi, Congress party under the leadership of Rajiv Gandhi formed the government, and it decided to revitalize the rural local self-governance. So, the government introduced in 1989 bill for this purpose. This bill was brought before the Parliament known as the Constitution 64th and 65th Amendment Bill. 64th Constitution Amendment Bill was relating to the Panchayati Raj institutions. This bill was passed by the Lok Sabha, but this bill could not be passed in the Rajya Sabha because the government did not have majority required for the passing of the bill in the Rajya Sabha. So, the bill fell. When the Congress party lost power in 1989, the next government under the leadership of VP Singh, that is United Front government, came up, and again it also introduced in 1990 the bill in the Parliament. But as the government fell down soon after the introduction of the bill again could not materialize in the form of the act. Now, again when the Congress party came to power under the leadership of Shri P.V. Narasimha Rao, it again remodified and reintroduced the same bill as the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Bill, and the bill was passed by the Parliament in 1992 as the 73rd Amendment Act. It was passed and ratified by the state in 1993, and this bill provided the constitutional status to the PRIs in the country. Now, provisions of the Act. 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act inserts a new part after Part 8, that is Part 9, and a new schedule called Schedule 11 in the Constitution. It consists of Articles 243A to 243O. The main provisions of the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Acts are organization of Gram Sabha, creation of a 3-tier Panchayati Raj structure at Zilla, block and village levels, all posts at all levels with 2 exceptions to be filled by direct elections, the minimum age for contesting elections to PRIs to be 21 years, indirect elections to post of chairman at the intermediate and apex tiers, reservation of seats for SC, ST in Panchayat in proportion to their population, reservation for women in Panchayat up to 13 seats, creation of a state election commission to conduct elections to PRIs, tenure of PRIs fixed at 5 years, and if dissolved earlier, fresh elections to be held within 6 months. In order to review the financial position of the PRIs, each state to set up a state finance commission every 5 years. 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act, which has constitutionalized the panchayats, inserted the following provisions. It added a new schedule to the constitution, that is schedule 11, and the provisions of this act were, first of all, the organization of the Gram Sabha, then the creation of the Panchayati Raj institutions in the at the 3 levels, that is village, block and Zilla district level. All the posts of the Panchayati Raj institutions to be filled in by the direct elections. Minimum age for contesting elections was to be fixed at 21 years. The tenure of the PRIs was also fixed at 5 years. Then the act recommended for the establishment of the state election commission to conduct elections to the PRIs bodies and a finance commission to review the financial status of the PRI bodies. The constitutional 73rd amendment came into operation in 1993, and since then most of the states have passed legislation to bring their Panchayati Raj institutions in conformity with new situation. Therefore, the panchayats are functioning today in almost all the states, though there is a variation from state to state regarding their structure, the evolution of authority, number of tiers, length of tenure, etc. It has initiated a great democratic experiment in self-rule at the local level of community. So, students, we see that the 73rd Amendment Act provided constitutional status, and since the 73rd Amendment, PRIs institutions are functioning in the country throughout the various states of the country. Now, let us have some critical evaluation of the Act. The functioning of the rural local bodies over more than 2.5 decades highlights that a lot still remains to be done. There exist large variations among the states in the functioning of the rural local bodies at the operational level. In order to make the system of rural local governance more functional and effective, we need to take care of the ills which are present in the system, like lack of will on the part of ruling class to make PRIs strong and vibrant units of governance, conservative and caste-ridden rural society, domination of PRIs by powerful and rich, violence, corruption, etc. Also, there are plethora of rural development programs and schemes implemented under the control of central state governments, number of overlapping committees comprising of MPs and MLAs functioning at district level, which minimized the scope for functioning of PR bodies. Ruthless attitude of bureaucracy, devolution of authority and finances has also not conformed to the spirit of the legislation. Lack of financial resources is a great weakness of the PR bodies. Students, the functioning of the rural local bodies throughout the country for more than 2.5 decades presents to us a picture which says that a lot still to be done in the field of PRIs. Then there is also a lack of devolution of finances to these PRI bodies. Adequate finances are not provided to these PRI bodies for their effective functioning in the country. So, we see that a lot has to be done for the effective functioning of these PRIs in the country. Conclusion: rural local governance is no magic wand, as the experience indicates. Its success or failure hinges upon the nature of the institutions created, the extent of power and finances delegated, the pattern of power distribution among groups in the region, and the participation of civil society. In this process, the state has vital role to play, so that right kind of system of governance is established at the grassroots levels. The periodic shuffling and reshuffling of leadership by the way of regular elections and an increase in level of politicization of local community will certainly ensure the success of PRIs in the foreseeable future. Transparency, accountability, effective planning and efficient delivery of goods and services can go a long way in improving the decentralization pattern in India. Thus, to conclude, from the foregoing analysis, we can say that Panchayati Raj institutions in India have travelled a long way from a mere mentioning of it in the constitution in the form of directive principles contained in part 4 article 40 to acquire a constitutional status through 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act. So, students, in today's lecture, we have traced the growth and evolution of the rural local self-governance in India, right from the ancient period, medieval ages, travelling to the British period and in the post-independence era. Right from the community development programs just introduced after the independence of the country and in the form of acquiring constitutional status by the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Acts. Though there are many hindrances still, but a lot can be done by the government and the state authorities in the development for the development of PRIs in the country.